Hello and welcome to PGurus Primetime. The US recently announced that it will be completely pulling out of Afghanistan by 9/11 2021. To completely understand the implications of this, we invite Jitendra Ojha, who has been on PGurus before. Namaskar and welcome, Jitendra Ojha ji.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sri.
And a brief bio on Sri Ojha. Jitendra Ojha is a former civil servant and geopolitical and security analyst. He has served for nearly 26 years with Cabinet Secretariat and Ministry of External Affairs of Government of India. He has also headed a national level Academy of Government of India training officers on security matters. He is an alumnus of Jawaharlal Nehru University and National Defense College with research degrees in diplomacy, defense, and strategic studies. He has taught and written extensively on terrorism, subversion, and insurgency. He also advises governments and corporate entities on geopolitical security issues. Welcome to PGurus channel Ji. It's been a while since we had you on our channel, sir.
Thank you so much, Sri. It's a delight to be with you on your channel and exchange some ideas with you.
And sir, today we are going to talk a little bit about the US pullout of Afghanistan. And evidently it was a unilateral decision on part of President Biden to do so, despite some of the generals saying that the United States needed to stay longer in the US. So in this context, I'm going to ask a few questions and perhaps you can share your wisdom because you are intimately familiar about the geopolitics, security and terrorism around this area. So when President Biden overruled his generals and said that US is pulling out on 9/11. Are these like famous last words or is this for real?
Look, it's difficult to say at this stage because from now onwards till September, a few months are left, we don't know what is going to happen. Unless and until something dramatic happens, it looks like that all combat troops, because what he has said that non-combat troops may stay there, some advisory consultancy troops or that kind of contingent can stay there, but combat troops is going to withdraw. And the reason is therefore too long because this war has been very expensive. And the generals, of course, they have their own ways of looking at it. But I'm sure as head of the government of the most powerful democracy or the most powerful country in the world, he has his own perspective. Lot many quarters within United States have been talking about that this war has been far too expensive, both in terms of financial costs and human costs. And this has been so high that in certain areas, China has surged ahead of United States in technological innovation. It has altered global geopolitical equilibrium to some extent. So these are things it must be weighing on him as well as people advising him. So this has been very much expected for quite some time. And this is in line with what President Trump has been doing. So on these things, it appears it is institutional wisdom of I can say sections of US national security establishment that has advised him. But yes, we suppose, as he himself has announced, that their vigil on terrorism is not going to decline, and we hope to see some newer approach. But this kind of an aggressive position in terrorism, we expect as democracy that this is likely to continue.
And countries like Pakistan and now China and Russia to some extent are trying to externalize their internal issues by saying that there are external threats. Now, Afghanistan is one place where Pakistan successfully sheltered Al-qaeda as well as aided in fighting them. They played on both sides. In your opinion, will history repeat itself now?
Look, history does not repeat. History also changes and evolves. But yes, Pakistan has a very strong stake in Afghanistan, and we have a reason to be concerned because, Sri, I have always maintained that nowhere this kind of irregular war, insurgency or terrorism can sustain without funding, without access to motivated cadres. And Afghanistan provides that for Pakistan because Pakistan has exploited the turbulent situation in Afghanistan for a long time. China has its own agenda. Soviet Russia is not there. Russia is there. They have their own interests in this region because the whole thing started when Americans themselves were accused of promoting radicalism to checkmate Soviet Russia. From there it started. But right now, Russia always had some interest in Afghanistan for a long time. So what we expect that terrorism can rather transition to a different level. Pakistan is going to retain Afghanistan. Pakistan is going to retain its influence in Afghanistan. To what extent it is going to be successful, it has to be seen, because this kind of groups, they can't be controlled for too long. There's fair amount of possibilities that even Taliban or some other groups may splinter in due course, and turbulence in Afghanistan can continue. And whatever good work that has been done by United States of America in building at least limited infrastructure for good government, like some sort of civilian government in Kabul and around, or major places, or centers of education and healthcare, some of these facilities may take a hit. Or even women, for the first time, they have gone to schools, they are finding places in important decision-making roles, I would say. So these things are going to suffer. But there's a fair amount of possibility that Afghanistan may slip into some kind of turbulence once again, because Afghanistan is one of the largest producers of heroin and poppy. Nearly 84% of the world's drug are cultivated in Afghanistan, and there is absolutely no way Taliban can traffic these drugs or this kind of thing, narcotics, without support of organized network that Pakistan has been having. There are a huge amount of studies also, Sri, that how a section of this money gets this thing transferred into legitimate businesses also. So Pakistan may be a very poor country, but there are sections of Pakistanis who are fairly influential, and not only influential, they run a very clandestine network. And China would also like to benefit from this network. China would like to do certain things which it can deny. And therefore, Pakistan has been rather willing to do this kind of dirty work. It's not new. Pakistan is suspected of doing this kind of dirty work even for the United States of America. You see how it is Pakistan that facilitated some kind of rapprochement between the United States and China in 1970s. So these kind of dynamics, they always have a role, but this kind of thing cannot be funded on its own. So Afghanistan provides a very, very, I would say, a lucrative source for generating funds, as well as generating manpower, as well as things of what I would say irregular warfare. Even terror is always has always been used by various powers with an element of deniability. This has been used to pursue their strategic goals. So I suppose that the whole thing will can transition to a different level. History would not repeat itself in the same way as it was 20 years back.
And so the United States has spent billions, and some estimates put it at 700 billion. I don't know if that's per year or over a period of 20 years. I think it is more like per year. That's what the numbers I hear, a lot of money. What has the average Afghan experience now? Is an average Afghan today better than he was 20 years ago, he or she?
There's a Brown University, Sri Brown University had commissioned a project, costs of
Ivy League school, yes.
Yes, so this is, they assessed that it was $6.4 trillion, and including if Afghanistan and Iraq both, they have included. But, there would be a lot of invisible costs which are difficult to quantify, in terms of human loss of human resources, etc. So this is there, and part of it, nearly 700 billions has been, it is as per available data, 700 billions has been towards building infrastructure for governance. I have been interacting with retired people from Afghan security forces, civil society, as well as those who are in politics. Of course, there has been advancement, but this progress has remained confined to urban centers only, because the terrain in Afghanistan is such that rural areas are very difficult to control, and Taliban, the dynamics is such that, these people operate with an element of fear. Even, it's impossible to, provide security to this kind of vast area. It's simply not possible, because you are fighting a defensive war, whereas they can come and target and kill few people, and they can intimidate entire population to submission. So there has been advances, there's no doubt about it. There has been progress, but compared to cost that has been invested, I think progress is negligible.
So now, Taliban didn't have any support financially, at least officially, from anyone. Then how was it sustaining itself? All of it is poppy cultivation stuff?
Look, there's no way finances cannot be there. Of course, Pakistan has been funding it. It is Pakistan's baby, Pakistan's creation.
But they themselves are bankrupt, sir.
No. Pakistan people may be bankrupt. Pakistan government may be bankrupt, but not Pakistan deep state and its members. They are one of the richest people. Their investments are huge. They would be having hundreds of billions of dollars worth investment in the United States itself and different parts of Europe. I was mentioning that there's one estimate which says that 84% of the drug is cultivated in Afghanistan. Official UNODC report says 1.5 billion is annually generated by Taliban through this drug cultivation itself. Then there is counterfeiting, there is extortion money, there's money laundering kind of thing. If you go a little deeper, these subjects people have been hesitant to talk about, and there is absolutely no way there can be an insurgency and crime is not there. I have been interacting with, have interacted with police officers and security specialists all over the world, and this is a very known fact. So Pakistan state may have financial constraints, but the amount of wealth that they have been generating without being in Karachi, it's not just an accident. So a large number of such groups are there, and through these groups, it's not very well-controlled government like this thing. Through these groups, they do coordinate, and that's why they provide patronage to them. It's a very complex kind of symbiotic relationship. Even United States Department of Defense has come out of large number of papers highlighting how these entities generate funds, and it is difficult because quite a significant amount of these funds have percolated into legitimate business. People may have started with drug or crime, but now they are running legitimate businesses, and the kind of influence, kind of clout they have is phenomenal. So there is no way for Pakistan. Taliban is a milking cow, I would say. Through Taliban, they are generating a lot of funds. Pakistani deep state, I would say. I have quoted in one of my write-ups what about Hamid Gul saying that ISI is an army and not a stick or watch in the hands of rulers. So this itself says that it's an independent kind of mercenary entity. So I don't think funds would be an issue for them. And as long as this kind of organized crime is going to continue, as long states are going to overlook organized crime, I'm sure it is going to be very difficult to contain terrorism. Some degree of use of terror is bound to happen as long as organized crime is not paid serious attention.
So Mr. Gul was essentially hinting that ISI, which was an intelligence gathering organization, decided that it will go into business for itself. Why waste intelligence and give it to the government, which was a puppet for like times immemorial? Is that what he's hinting, sir?
No, he was always known for scuttling civilian government. They are useless, they are not patriotic, etc. And he felt that not he, entire establishment, especially post-Zia era, he took the whole thing to a different level. They made this kind of terror and organized crime, they made it an industry, a self-sustaining industry kind of thing. And through this self-sustaining industry, they felt that they can take care of their adversaries. They can inflict far more damage to their adversary, so-called adversaries, perceived adversaries. And at the same time, they can build a kind of clout. And that person was so confident. He was saying that we will not only ISI has defeated Russia with help of Americans, eventually ISI will defeat America with help of Americans. So you see the audacity. So they realize very well that in kind of clandestine war, you don't require far too much of resources. You require a small amount of resources, and if you require a small amount of motivated cadres and certain access to certain kind of things, and you can very well run a well-oiled organized crime machinery. And then you will have invisible army, and through invisible army, a person who's not seen, imagine the kind of damage you can inflict. And you see what they have done to Americans. They have hurt American pride. They have today, very sad to see that the most powerful country in the world and a beacon of democracy is in such a bad situation. It is not a healthy situation that America has not finished this war. They have not emerged comprehensively victorious, and they have to leave this war inconclusive. So that shows, how complex the dynamics of this war is.
And thanks for the clarification, Jitendra ji. What kind of lessons does India learn from this US war on terror? Could the war have been fought differently globally? What's your opinion?
There are multiple lessons to be learned. I have also written one paper, on it, very concept paper I have given, not brought out the whole thing in public domain. Interestingly, we have very wise men and women in the United States of America. They themselves say that, this kind of war should not be like a grand strategy or a grand stratagem of warfare. It has to be a series of interdependent, smaller this thing. But I don't know what happens when it gets down to putting these ideas into practice. because either in Vietnam or in Afghanistan or in Iraq, they have not been very convincingly victorious, or rather, they have to leave these wars in the middle. I would feel that they failed to appreciate, firstly, certain details of this war. Some degree of force which they applied was brilliant. Even this also, I agree with this idea that they should have tried to build a very good institutions of governance who can, eliminate space for terror. And a healthy governance, good governance is very critical. But two, three very critical areas they missed. One was sustained propaganda which was going on, Islamic radicalization which was going on. They also failed to rather assess that if you target this thing, they have also been, a lot of academics, researchers, and former security professionals. They have talked about boomerang impact of countermeasures, because countermeasures don't necessarily eliminate threat of terror. Rather, they create, disgruntled pockets. So this aspect also should have been handled very well, which did not happen.
So, viewers, you are welcome to send in your questions. And as you can see, Mr. Jitendra Ojha is very well versed with this region. He has given us new perspectives on this whole misadventure that was United States in Afghanistan. And feel free to ask questions, and we will try and include them as part of this hangout. So next, you're going to finish something. I'm sorry, sir. We lost you and now you're back.
So what I said, that what United States ignored, they allowed like radical propaganda to go on. They could not handle this publicity impact very well. They should have allowed, found out friends within Islamic community, Islamic cleric, ulema, etc. They have rather created them. They should have created even civilian structures and networks, etc. Put local people on forefront, local this thing. They did not do that. They did not attack organized crime network, drug, etc. and all these things which were happening. They did not attack or did not target that. They did not even try to address subversion of their own institutions. There's a lot of lobbying and other networks which were going on the soil of United States itself. They did not pay much attention to that. And worse was, even when Osama bin Laden was caught in Pakistan, they have not been tough with Pakistan. And when I speak with academics and soldiers, retired soldiers of the United States, even they feel that their country has not been very tough with Pakistan. They have rather tried to contain the symptoms of this war and did not address the roots of this thing. And that is one thing. For India, I would say that India has done a wise thing at one level, that we did not participate in military campaigns. But secondly, this is a war, and in war, we cannot be inward looking. We have to develop suitable offensive capacities, and suitable offensive capacities means if somebody is, I would say, growing demons or crocodiles or dangerous creatures right across our neighborhood or in our neighborhood, naturally that is going to impact us. So we should have mobilized global opinion, global action, and done everything possible to target and attack it in a manner which is cost effective, in a manner which is sustainable. So I suppose that India has to have both defensive and offensive strategies. We have to see that we have a top class mechanism for rule of law, and wherever required, or I would say all stakeholders of India, not only political class or bureaucratic class, they need to sit together and realize gravity of this problem. And this problem should not be, focused that, okay, terrorism and violence as a component alone has to be contained. No, there are so many factors which are giving rise to this violence, the psyche behind this violence, what can happen. So these things have to be analyzed, and we have to come out with a solution which is far more effective. So I'm sure American misadventure or America's failure to conclude this war on terror in Afghanistan gives a lot of lessons to democracies and transparent societies. And I hope, that people realize it, and we are able to come out with a more, I would say, effective strategy.
Now let's take a step back, Jitendra ji, and let's look at the region itself. We know that Turkey, Pakistan, and Iran axis is now starting to influence the terror situation in a more global manner. Now, what we are seeing is China is also backing this. And China has got its own skeletons in its cupboard, like the Uyghurs. And yet, these others don't seem to mind. They want to only look at China as a donor for their cause and perhaps some infrastructural thing. Is this a dangerous game, and what do democracies have to do to counter this growing axis?
There are three factors, I would say, Shri. One, some powers, some states who think that they are extremely powerful, they are going to continue, or rather using terror in limited way, in selected way, to promote their strategic interests. And in emerging situation, China appears hell-bent upon doing that. China is not much bothered about Uyghur because China, as you know, is an autocratic and opaque kind of thing. What China thinks that slightest of, dissidence which comes up anywhere, it will use much higher amount of force, much higher degree of force, and it doesn't mind, collateral damage also. Even if a lot of innocent people die within China, etc., China can bear that cost. Democracies don't have that option. Second, what China thinks, by promoting this kind of thing, it can coerce lot many regions, lot many states by promoting this. Pakistan, Turkey, and Iran, or for that matter, anybody else who comes up. It has two, three things, as you know, that China is very hungry for resources. We all have been talking about, there are metals and minerals worth excess of $3 trillion in Afghanistan. We have seen China's hunger for marine resources in South China Sea, what it is doing in Central Asia, what it is doing in Africa. So through these kind of things, China gets a kind of lever through which it can coerce other regions. And not only coerce, there's a strong possibility that the way China is extracting mineral resources from Africa or Latin America or these things, it doesn't have authority. So whosoever is legitimate government or legitimate corporate rivals, if China has clout through Pakistan, Iran, and this thing, it is able to, I would say, breed terror selectively. Whether in Africa or in Afghanistan, it can use terror. It can eliminate competition from anyone. No corporate organization of the West would be able to challenge China. So that is why China, in my perception, I don't know what the reason is, but this is a possibility. Why China is backing Turkey, Pakistan, and other this thing. It can straight away deny it doesn't have any role. But can you visualize the amount of clout China will garner by supporting these things? And somehow I feel that United States or their security establishment, they have not been able to come out with a very cohesive approach on this issue. So this is what I suppose. And being a dictatorship, being an autocracy, slightest degree of dissidence on its own territory, it doesn't mind killing a large number of its own citizens also. So its Uyghur region is very well contained. So I hope I have clarified this issue for you.
And so whatever you just said that was being applied to like countries like Africa and perhaps to Afghanistan, maybe Balochistan, the same thing could happen in India also. I mean, some people say that the Sterlite factory closing down was a handiwork of external elements. Although it's very convenient to blame it on others when the protesters are also Indians and the company is also India owned. So you think that the same kind of techniques are being handled or are being deployed in India too?
Well, Sri, I wouldn't like to speak much on this thing because, 10 years back, I realized, that I was wasting my time in government. And by seeing kind of corruption and subversion which was there in India, I felt my country was at war with itself. Because right from senior cabinet ministers to very senior bureaucrats to top corporate leaders, everybody had something to hide. And this is a dangerous situation. It's not that we are in that bad a situation. We still have a very strong class of highly committed people, especially in civil service, I would say. I have come across, in security establishments, I have come across. But what has happened in India that, this kind of broad leadership has not happened. I was hoping 7 years have passed. I was hoping Prime Minister Modi will take a little initiative, get people, get their views. Because if 90% or 95% of our elite have a lot of skeletons in their cupboard, it's a very dangerous situation. It will paralyze our capacity to act, number one. Number two, also, we should not be very inward looking. There's Hindu psyche of, being nice, good. It doesn't work out. We have to be nice and good, but we have to step out of this thing. We have to try and shape events around ourselves. We have to try and influence events outside our own territory, not necessarily through force, but through a variety of means, whether it is diplomatic engagement, whether sharing experience, etc. But that is going to happen only if we have a strong governance capacity at home. Not much has happened in this area because this kind of governance structure, etc., is very flawed, Sri, and maybe we should have a chat on another day how to go about it. But yes, there is a serious apprehension that Chinese can use these kind of techniques, and we remain fairly vulnerable to it. Right now, we are sustaining, and I'm sure we can do very well also, better also, because we have exceptionally intelligent and exceptionally committed people. Small percentage is there, but we still have that within our, of course, our defense forces level of professionalism. I feel that they are far ahead of even the United States and China. I'm not trying to say it to please you. I am an alumnus of National Defense College. I have done courses with, I have my batchmates and friends in defense forces and also sections of civil service. But I think this has to be translated into institutional wisdom and institutional capacity to handle these challenges, both domestically and I would say both internationally.
And what challenges are likely to emerge for India from this, that US pullout? What does India need to do to contain the fallout of this? Are we going to experience a lot of immigrants from Afghanistan, or is some of the terror again going to be transported back to Indian borders, because now Pakistan will be looking at Taliban as a, oh God, now I have a partner, I can ask them, go do this, go do that, and then say, look, I didn't do it, it's somebody else. No, like the tribal thing that happened in 1947. What are your thoughts, sir?
Of course, the way Pakistan has built up a highly emotive propaganda against India, it is impossible for Pakistan to give up hostilities towards India in near future. This is simply not possible. What has happened, of course, the morale has evolved, and this kind of withdrawal has a huge psychological impact. It dents morale of everyone who has been fighting against terror, and especially the way West has remained ambivalent towards Pakistan even now. Despite we mentioned Osama bin Laden being caught there, every whole world knows that Taliban is a proxy of Pakistan, but still West has been extremely ambivalent. I don't know what the reason is, but this is going to embolden them. There is no doubt at all. And with Chinese backing, with Turkish access, and what has happened in this world of organized crime and terrorism also, it's a very different world. And the countries and states and legitimate powers, they may not have the kind of solidarity. But these people are fighting for defense and offense both, and the kind of solidarity they enjoy is far stronger. And support of a state to a host of these transnational terror organizations, etc., is very crucial. And all these three countries, and I would say more Turkey and Pakistan, they have been willing to bail out Al-qaeda and ISIS. I've also written in my piece, and the journalists of that area, they have written extensively how they have been visiting Istanbul and how Erdogan has been promoting and patronizing them. So naturally, their underhand clout remains very strong. How is it going to play out in India is difficult to say. Of course, we have NIA, we have a highly professional bunch of young and middle-level officers, and they know much better. Our capacities are far stronger, so it may not work out in the same way. But what happens in terrorism, one or two incidents, these have huge psychological impact. So Pakistan has that capacity. The disadvantage we have that, we do have a large number of organized crime networks who are flourishing on our own territory. Worst is that, a section within our police establishment, they are corrupt to the core, thoroughly corrupt. And Sachin Wajay, another episode, this is just a small sample. And good number of them, for some reason, because of lax system, not now, last 10, 15 years, 20 years, they have been working, and they have come to occupy very powerful position. And they would target Nambi Narayan case. I don't know whether you have been on that date or not. I have been there several times.
We wrote about it about 3-4 years ago. In fact, PGurus was one of the first to dust it off, because CBI had finally filed the closure report. We were the first ones to write about it. And then all these things stripped, and Nambi Narayan came back into the main dialogue, in people's narratives and so on. Please continue, sir.
Yeah, I don't want to wash any dirty linen in public, but there are quite a few issues that rules are abused, and very top-class professionals and exceptional individuals, they continue to be targeted even under this government, because the stakes are very high for partners of Pakistan within this country, or partners of China within this country, because it's hundreds and billions of dollars worth industry. They may be getting a smaller pie. So if we say, okay, we are paying our civil servants very well, it is not sufficient. Good number of them are greedy, and it requires calls for a larger strategic approach to handle both corruption and subversion. I don't see much happening over there. So this is one area which disturbs, as you say, Sterlite. You see what happened in Serum Institute, this fire incident which breaks out. So if these groups are working, they are able to work and operate freely on our territory, naturally it is extremely worrying. It is extremely worrying. Political funding, we have mentioned, it is not opaque. Our judiciary, with due respect to judges and their caliber, if it takes 20 years, 30 years to decide, if you can't approach this thing, it is going to be very dangerous. So I suppose that we have to be extremely careful, and large number of Indian corporates who think that, they can leave this country, they can migrate to the West. I would, through your channel, I would like to tell them, that after all said and done, the way racism is rising in Europe and North America, they will remain second-class citizens. So they need to develop a stake within India. We need to have top-class institutions and a stronger rule of law mechanism. So I think that in days to come, if we, I would say, I won't say I like to make any negative prediction. I'm still very confident and optimistic about at least sections of, I would say, committed, honest, and top-class professionals who are there in our institutions. But it's going to be very challenging. This is going to embolden Pakistan. These networks will also derive a lot of things. What disturbs me most that we keep on talking about Hindu nationalist government, but radical Islamist propaganda keeps on happening every day, here, there, and everywhere within India. It shows, that some elements are there. Even if it is not violent, terrorism can also mutate. There is one possibility. Terrorism, after all, is part of irregular warfare. If they think, they have been able to influence psyche of people to an extent that without resorting to violence, they can paralyze our system, they can carry out mass agitation, they can carry out extensive negative propaganda, both domestically and exploit it internationally. Those are things we need to watch out, Sri.
And that was a fascinating talk and conversation that I experienced, and I'm sure our viewers felt that we have uncovered a few more cobwebs, few more things that perhaps it has not been discussed in any public channel before. And I'm very grateful to you, Jitendra ji, for sharing your thoughts. And we have a few questions. I just want to pick three questions with your permission from viewers, and if I could just read out those for you. First question is from V. Iyer. Do you believe that America's objectives in involvement in Afghanistan, have they been achieved? If not, is this also another loss for America?
Right now, what I understand by reading media reports, that people who have been advising American government, they assess that in prevailing situation, these groups within Afghanistan are in no position to carry out an attack on American soil. Maybe they have strengthened security countermeasures domestically, and they feel that the degree of threat is not there. So if you see from this perspective, they can say they have managed to secure America, and they don't expect or anticipate any terror attack on American territory the way it happened in 2001. So that is one way. But if we see in a larger way, we discussed, how China could patronize, how China could coerce, governments, states in Africa, etc., can enhance domain of its influence. If required, certain raw materials, even in South America, China can access even block access of even United States to those things. So this kind of Chinese global domination, which is going on, and terrorism and Pakistan, Turkey, and Iran nexus, the way it can be used, or even Russia can be used to some extent, I don't think that United States of America has fulfilled its long-term strategic objectives. But yes, one thing is clear, they need to do something different. This strategy has demonstrated it was too expensive, unsustainable, and could not meet its core objectives, I would say.
Mr. Lee wants to know, is there a nationalist feeling in Iranian Baluchistan and a sense of identity with those in Pakistani Balochistan?
Look, Pakistan, I suppose, only thing the Pakistani military has tried to use is promote Islamic radicalism to retain some degree of relevance, because it's an artificial country, no history at all. West has propped it up, through the biggest man-made carnage in human history, one can say. But this, having said that, at no point of time There's all these constituents, they were part of Pakistan. They don't identify themselves with Pakistan. Balochistan has a long history. As soon as Pakistan became independent, from 20th January, 20th August 1947, Baluchis had brought down Pakistani flag and burned it. But by using bogey of India and Hindu threat, etc., they have suppressed everyone within Pakistan, and they have extensively promoted this pan-Islamism kind of thing to bring some kind of unity. They tried it in East Pakistan also. It didn't work out. Even now in East Pakistan, Razakar and Al-Badr, Al-Shams, etc., these groups are there who believe in Pakistan. So these splintered groups are there who keep on talking about Islamic kind of thing. And that's how Pakistan has been sustaining. If you leave aside that, Sindhis are not very happy, never been very happy with Pakistan. Baluchis always unhappy with Pakistan. Pakhtuns, frontier Gandhi's time, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, they never wanted to be with Pakistan. But by creating, this kind of terror groups or these things, they are able to intimidate local population into submission. And people have no option. And after some times, it becomes part of their behavior. So that's how they have been managing. But I suppose that barring a small Sunni, Wahhabi, Punjabi, this thing, no one wants to be with Pakistan. Ahmadiyyas, Shias, all of them are Hazaras, all of them are unhappy. So this kind of nationalism is there. They don't have an option. That's why Baluchis from both sides, they have a common kind of identity. But in a larger sense, as an Indian, I think that they were all part of larger Indian identity, I would say. Since they don't have an option, so they are trying to come out with this Balochi nationalist sentiment. This is what I believe, Sri.
Next question. What mineral resources does Afghanistan have? Would the Taliban government be interested in expanding their economy beyond narcotics?
Of course, large quantity of metals and minerals both are there. If you Google it, they will find it out. This is a factual question. So I would like to invest my time on strategic this thing. Yes, Taliban would like, but unfortunately, the kind of structure which Taliban has firmly under control of Pakistan, at best they would like a share in some kind of kickbacks, not welfare of people of Pakistan, welfare of people of Afghanistan. Because if economy is expanded, an average Afghan starts getting benefit of it through better healthcare, better school, better this thing, so this milking cow will be dead. So they would like to provide some kind of security. It depends, it has to be seen to what extent this kind of thing can work out. But right now, people like me who are assessing that China thinks that because of their nexus with Taliban through Pakistan, Taliban will keep quiet. They will not disturb them when they start extracting this thing. Certain area they will manage to sanitize, and they will carry on with this exploration. Both oil are there, and this metals are there. Copper, everybody has spoken. Copper, iron, aluminium, a huge amount of zinc. This is there. I'm sure he can find it out if he Googles. So, but the net entire this thing is assessed is approximately $3 trillion. So, the Taliban and Pakistan both would like to get a share in this kickbacks. By members of Pakistani deep state will enrich themselves. Some Talibanis will enrich themselves, but I don't think they want to expand it in a way where entire population of Afghanistan will benefit. That does not appear a possibility.
So their prosperity lies in keeping the population poor and hungry all the time.
Absolutely poor, hungry, radicalized, so that because world has never been fair. Democracy, India has always been a society-centric kind of civilization. We think in well-being of this thing. Right now, we think in numbers. I don't think in world it really matters. It matters who is more powerful. Through a small number of people, if they're able to dominate the rest, where people are willing to die, go to heaven also, they have no interest in anything of this world. Would they care for comprehensive well-being of people or education, healthcare and all these things? I don't think they are interested in that. So their interest lying in keeping Afghanistan perpetually under poverty and under this kind of lawlessness so that they can extract its wealth and resources. So I hope, some kind of, even if this realization comes, it's very difficult to provide security. And, what happens once people are radicalized, Pakistan has done to such an extent that people have lost their reasonableness to think. And, at one end, people are carrying Kalashnikovs and rifles, guns and everything. And who are fighting them? Those so-called educated people who are civilized, etc. They don't want to carry on fight. So this is not an equal fight. This is not going to work out at all.
Well, tumultuous times there. And last question for you for today. Samir Patil wants to know, should India promote Loya Jirga components to counter Al-qaeda that might come back again?
Look, Loya Jirga has always been there, part of this thing. I would not like to speak much about it, but India has to assure and India has to use every possible strategy to see that this fight against Al-Qaeda or IS or radicalism is indigenous and local. So to that extent, India has to do this, because Pakistan is saying, yes, Afghanistan will resolve everything. But for them, Afghanis are who? Those who are proxies of Pakistan, Taliban. So in the name of Afghanistan, this thing. But I have been interacting with some former soldiers of Pakistan, former generals of Pakistan, former soldiers of Afghanistan and former generals of Afghanistan. I've been interacting with them. And they are extremely bitter about Pakistani involvement. And they say that, Americans have left us literally in a pathetic situation, and they are quite worried that Afghanistan can slip into anarchy and Pakistani agenda. So I think, this section of people, they have to be on the forefront. But then the question comes up, if at another level, those who are funding them, they have no dearth of funds. And this crime, drug money, and this kind of money and terrorism, it's a very heady kind of cocktail. So I would suppose that even if United States has withdrawn, it has to give a renewed focus globally. And at least they are all said and done. We consider them leaders of democratic and civilized world in Europe. They have to give a strong focus to push on these moves against organized crime. Because if this funding, etc., these things, they start coming under pressure, only then a local resistance can come up. And I feel India has, or I won't say India alone, the whole world, whole civilized world has a lot to gain from resistance to Al-Qaeda, radicalism and terrorism. And if in Afghanistan, it has to be indigenous. It must come from local people.
Wow. I didn't know how 45 minutes flew, but time just flew. And listening to you, Jitendra ji, this is a very sobering talk at how things are going to unfold in the months and years to come in the region, South Asia region. And India would have perhaps gotten its head up from above, from under the water, having survived COVID by September, and then brace yourself, the next storm is coming along. So I hope that some of the things that we have discussed here goes to the ears of the people who can do something about it. And all we can do is shine a torchlight and say that here are all your problems and here are the ways to go about doing it. But we can't do this thing ourselves. We can just be like a thermometer to tell the patient that you have a fever. And I think we have done that very admirably today. Viewers, thanks for watching this, and please send in your comments and do subscribe to PGurus channel. And as always, a pleasure to have you on our channel, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.